Here we are together again. Now, German farmers this time have begun a week of nationwide demonstrations, protests, blocking roads with tractors and all of the rest. It's protest against government plans to phase out agricultural subsidies, which all sounds very dry. However, those farmers are not alone. Lorry drivers and hauliers and others, people like you and me have joined in the protests. We'll be following this up in far more detail next week because it's a story that will run and run. But for now, I wanted to get a sense of exactly what's happening in Germany. And to do that, I'm joined from Brussels by the academic and social commentator Frank Ferreri. Frank, good evening. Thanks for joining me.
Hi there. Nice to talk to you.
Can you give us, first of all, a sense of the scale? You have seen stuff online, but just how big a protest are we talking about?
This is really massive. It's quite unprecedented because it covers the whole of Germany. And not only does it include farmers, but as you were suggested, ordinary peoples are getting stuck in. Something like 68% of the German population is backing the farmers. That's according to the state television survey that they've carried out. And I've talked to several people who've been on these demonstrations who indicate that what they're really seeing here is a genuine movement who feel that their whole way of life is now under attack because they're not just simply rebelling and protesting against the economic cost of environmentalism in Germany, but what they are really scared about and worried about is that the whole rural way of life will be undermined. It's not just simply, as far as they're concerned, about their jobs, but a way of life. These are people who for generations have lived on the land. And you know, we have a situation where ever since the beginning of this century, almost half of German farms have closed down because of all these new regulations that have been brought in and all the economic costs that they've been forced to bear as a result of net zero policies.
You mentioned net zero. Can you expand on that? You know, what is the overarching ideology that's motivating this attack? And it is an attack on farmers and farming, not just in Germany, but frankly all over the world.
It's very difficult to explain, but it almost seems to have the character of a religious crusade, where you just assume that if you emit carbon, then in some shape or form, you know, you've committed a sin. And these people who think that we have got to stop carbon emissions from occurring often go so far as to imagine that having less babies, for example, is a duty, is a moral duty. And some people in Australia have even suggested that if you have more than 2 babies as a family, you should pay a carbon tax on the 3rd baby. So instead of seeing a little baby, a beautiful little baby coming to this world, what they say is a bit of carbon that is creating problem for society. And when you have that kind of mindset, then it's not surprising that when it comes to attacking the farmers, what they really want is to substantially reduce animal husbandry. They're basically putting all kinds of taxes on farming equipment. They are also cutting some of the support systems that have been in place for years. For example, the support that the government has provided for diesel fuel. And all that would make farming a very, very difficult enterprise. But worse still, imagine you're a farmer and you've invested all this money in your land and you assume that these are the rules that you have to farm by. But a year later, you're told that the rules have changed because now we have new net zero policies. And 6 months after that, there are even more new rules that come in. And I've talked to farmers in Europe who literally spend their weekends working with the red tape that's almost kind of destroying their way of life. And they're kind of looking at the paperwork all the time. And essentially what they feel is happening is just when they think they understand the demands that are being placed upon them by the net zero lobbyists, new rules come along to erode their way of life.
Frank, I'm going to have to wind this up just because of shortage of time. As I said, and as I hope you appreciate, we're going to pick this up in much more detail next week. But thank you so much for that. As I've said before, and others like me, we are the carbon that they're trying to reduce. That's it from me this week. Thanks to my guests, Andrew Bridgen MP, Michael Rudkin, Frank Ferretti and Andrew Eborn. I'll see you next Saturday. Next up, the Saturday Five.